Hey, fancy listeners. Franchesca Hampton here, and I am honored that you took time to tune in once again. And I'm committed to sharing content that will make you glad you did. So, welcome to the Fancy Thoughts Podcast, a weekly podcast designed to give you perspective, insight, and encouragement to release the greatness inside of you. I want you to live fancy life, where you are fostering achievement, never compromising you, because someone is waiting for you. Before we get into this week's fancy thought, once again, let's remind ourselves what we talked about last time. In our last episode, we asked, what's your story? What is the narrative that you're telling yourself about yourself? We reminded ourselves that we need to see greatness on the inside of us first, because that is what is going to determine what we say about ourselves. And we reminded ourselves of the saying that the story you tell yourself is the life that you will live. So let's make sure that we're telling ourselves a story of truth, of greatness, of responsibility, and of awesomeness, because you are awesome. And the greatness that's on the inside of you, someone is waiting for that, because someone is waiting for you. Now let's get into this week's fancy thought. As we continue talking about the whole process of releasing greatness and understanding that release of greatness requires trying as many times as it takes, not being afraid of failure, not being afraid of the things that we don't know, and making sure that we're telling ourselves a story of truth and of greatness and of possibility. We have to make sure that along the way, we ensure we're enjoying the journey. And that is the title of this week's fancy thought. Enjoy the journey. Throughout this process, there are so many different things that we're going to encounter. And some of them are going to be magnanimous. Some of them are going to be magnificent. And some of them are going to be challenging and disappointing and things that we just wish did not happen. My dear, that is life. And this process of releasing greatness is no different. We're going to have our ups and downs, our ebbs and our flows. There is no perfect situation. There is no perfect release. There's no perfect product. There's no perfect person. Therefore, there's no perfect success. However, throughout this journey of releasing greatness, there are many different things that you will encounter along the way that you want to make sure that you breathe in, if you will. You want to make sure that you stop and smell the roses, as they say. You want to make sure that you're enjoying this process, because we've talked about this before. So many times we get engaged in, or so many times we get caught up in the end result. We get caught up in what we know we want to accomplish or what that final product should look like. And so we speed past and speed through each stage. We speed through it so fast because we want to hurry up and get to the end. But I encourage you to make sure that you're embracing and living in each of the different stages and moments that it takes to get to where you want to be. Why? Because the reality is each stage that you go through, each progress or each process that you go through is imperative for the ultimate goal. What do I mean by that? There are certain areas that you are being developed in throughout this process. There are certain areas that you're growing and improving in throughout this process. There are things that you are learning throughout this process. And if we're not careful, we can easily skip over or lightly esteem those lessons along the way, because our main focus is the end result. Our main focus is, are we there yet? Think of it when you're in the car and you have small children or even young children or sometimes impatient adults, and you're going for a long drive and you've been in the car for what seems like forever. And it's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And the main idea is that we're so focused on the end result that all of the stuff in between is irrelevant. The most important part is, are we there yet? Have we reached the end? Have we came to our conclusion? Why do I need to pay attention to all the other things? I just want to get there. We've all been there. We've all felt that way. Even driving myself, I like to drive. And sometimes it's like, okay, I've been driving for quite some time. Are we there yet? But you know how I was able to kind of counteract that thought? Now, when I take long drives, I purposely stop. I remember I was on a road trip some years ago, and we were going pretty far, going from, the top of the U.S. down to the lower part of the U.S. And so We knew we were going to have some stop-offs in the way where we had to spend the night. But even during the drive, after we had been driving for maybe an hour, 2 hours, I would take out Google Maps and I would just start looking, what is in this area? It's like, we've been driving long enough. Let's find something to do. Why? Because I wanted to enjoy the journey. I didn't want to be so overwhelmed with getting there that I missed all the possibilities that I was surrounded with or surrounded by while I was driving. And it's the same thing in life. We have to make sure that we're not so laser focused on the end that we miss out on all the wonderful things that are around us as we're progressing on this journey. So, of course, I want to back this up by some definitions. And so the first definition that I want to look at is the word journey. And that is in, of course, our favorite dictionary, the Collins Dictionary. And it says for journey, it refers to a person's experience of changing or developing from one state of mind to another. I love that definition or that reference. So I'll say it again. It refers to a person's experience of changing or developing from one state of mind to another. It's a journey. As we continue to move forward, as we grow, our mindsets expand, our mindsets grow, our perspective changes. Because the more you're exposed to certain things, the more you understand things you may not have understood before. For example, speaking again about travel, I remember when I was younger, my thought was always, to go, to a whole nother continent or to go outside of the US even, that is so much money. To go on a cruise, oh my goodness, that's going to cost so much money. I don't know when I'll ever be able to do that. And I began to talk to other people who started traveling or who had been traveling to other places. And they gave me a new perspective. They were saying, definitely depending on the destination that you want to go to, it may cost a certain amount of money, but there are ways that you can plan for that. You just start saving, set aside a certain amount of money each month, talk to a travel agent. You can also sign up for particular types of packages that allow you to pay over time. There's a way to do it. And so, of course, as I learned to budget my money and learn how to include travel and include leisure activities as part of my budget, then I began to see the possibilities. And even just recently, I've had the ability to do something that I've always wanted to do, and that was to travel to Europe. And so I was able to go to both London and Dublin for a trip. And I did it by myself. And it was something that I had been wanting to do for so long. And I finally just said, you know what? This is the time. This is the year. I'm going to do it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because that was a journey. It was a process. It was an experience. It was me changing or developing my state of mind from being narrow-minded and thinking that it was something that would be overwhelming or not possible to something that is tangible, possible, doable, and accomplished. This is the journey. And so as we're releasing greatness, we have to understand we're going through that process. We are changing and developing from where you thought that being a business owner was just a dream. Being a business owner was just something that maybe one day you'll accomplish it. Whereas today you are writing out your business plan. You're writing out your success story, if you will. And tomorrow you're actually putting your product marketing together. Perhaps you're putting together your advertising, or you're putting together how you're going to package whatever it is that you are going to be producing and providing to others. It's a journey. And it's something that we all are going to have to go through in order to release greatness. Because I guarantee where you are today is not exactly what it's going to look like in the years to come. It's a journey. And so as we're going through that, the other definition is the word enjoy. We need to make sure that we enjoy that experience of changing or developing from one state of mind to another. What does it mean to enjoy? I looked this up in the Webster's 1828 dictionary, and I truly appreciate this viewpoint. It means to hold as a good or profitable thing or as something desirable. And that's why it's important to enjoy. It means that as we're developing, we need to expect that that's a desirable thing. I want to change. I want to grow. A lot of people sometimes they're like, I don't like change. I like things. If it works, don't break it. If it's a habit, I want to keep doing it. I don't want to change. But sometimes there are certain things that have to change in order for us to reach our goals. Things about us that have to change, have to adapt, have to morph in order for us to truly be as successful as we want to be. And so we have to expect or hold that change as a good or profitable thing. We have to hold that change, that experience of developing as something desirable. We have to look at it and say, you know what? I know this might be uncomfortable in times, and there might be moments where I don't like it, but I want to do this. I know I need to do this. This is going to work for my benefit. This is going to work for my good. This is going to help me accomplish the things that I need to accomplish. So yes, I choose to go through this process. I choose to go through this journey, and I'm going to enjoy it. And of course, the other definition of enjoy is taking pleasure or satisfaction in the experience. Throughout the process, we have to learn to find ways to celebrate and be excited about even the small things. In season 1, we talked about celebrating the small victories. So for me, my first trip that was outside of my norm, I was excited about it, preparing for it, planning for it. I remember when I went on my first cruise and I was like, wow, this is something I've always wanted to do. And it was a small cruise. I simply went to the Bahamas, but I had never been to the Bahamas before. I'd never been on a cruise ship before. So it was a small thing. It was only 3 days, but it was the beginning of a change in my mindset. It was a change in the way I thought. And it was also a change in what I thought was possible or what I realized I could actually accomplish. And that has sparked so many trips beyond that point. Even this podcast, changing from doing videos of songs on Facebook to doing Fancy Thoughts as a video on a video platform on all the social media outlets that I used to do, to now doing this podcast and being on Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, and now expanding my social media presence. I'm even on TikTok now, which I thought I would never be on. And so now it's the reality that I want to reach people in every capacity, in every medium, in every possibility that I can. And so I have to continue to grow and develop and change. And you know what? I'm embracing it. I'm recognizing it as something that's desirable and necessary and profitable, and I'm going to enjoy it as I go. So I'll leave you with this. Wherever you are today, I guarantee you weren't in the same space that you were a few years ago. Even if it looks like you're in the same environment, something about you has changed. Something about the way you think, something about the way you do what you do has changed, whether you realize it or not. And so you are already in this process. You're already in the journey. Why don't we recognize that this journey will continue and make it a decision, make a conscious decision to consider it desirable, profitable, and determined we will enjoy the journey, because at the end of it, you will release the very thing that someone is waiting for, because someone is waiting for you. Thank you for joining us for the Fancy Thoughts podcast. I'm Franchesca Hampton, and I look forward to you tuning in again next week. And remember, you are well able, fully capable, and properly equipped to accomplish everything you were created for. So go and make this week a great one.